evening and welcome to the Daily Geeky Pastimes podcast, episode number 38, with all the gaming news from the 26th of May 2023. Slightly different episode today. We're going to be talking at length about Gollum because I kind of feel like you shouldn't talk too negatively about games. You know, if you don't like a game, move on to something you do like. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk about Gollum today, then hopefully never speak of it again because God, that game's terrible. But it's like almost interesting how terrible it is. I was playing it for just over 2 hours yesterday on stream, and yeah, it's something that boggles my mind. Like a lot of the thing we talk about, games releasing, games getting delayed, games getting cancelled, a lot of that stuff kind of seems to get thrown out the window when you think about a game like this. Like this game, this is a game that's released, I'm not sure did anyone any good anywhere. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit, and we have a bunch of other gaming news. There's quite a few little announcements. There's a lot of Warhammer announcements. So let's do the gaming news first, I think. First of all, a non-Warhammer announcement. Homeworld 3 has been delayed to February 2024. This doesn't come as a massive surprise. It was meant to come out at the beginning of this year, so it was meant to be like an early 2023 kind of thing. And it's now, you know, already the end of May and no sign of it. And we haven't really seen that much gameplay from it either. Homeworld, for anyone who doesn't know, is a real-time strategy game set in space. And the original did something really interesting that still kind of blows my mind a little bit. In that the entire battlefield is just 3D space. So you're moving units, not just on the X and Y axis, but on the Z axis as well. They can have different kind of... they can have like different planes that they're fighting on. So if you're, say, trying to flank an enemy, you don't just have kind of, oh, I could go around left and right, but you could come down from sort of above or below, even though there's not really an above or below. It made for an intensely complicated game for like micromanagement and things like that. It means that your ships nearly always have like an extra escape route, but it also means that sometimes it's harder to sort of surround someone because there is always that sort of extra way out. It also means, because it's in space, there's not really any cover. So it's not like you can sort of bring units around a way that the enemy aren't going to see, because when the game starts, normally like you've got your kind of mothership at one end of the space area, and then the other enemy is at the other end, and you can see them straight away. Like you can kind of see what they're doing. And that kind of changes the game quite a lot as well. That it's much more about, I guess, like an arms race of who can build up fleets quickly enough and sort of like make the right decisions about composition and things like that, and then throw them at each other. Even though I'm like a big real-time strategy fan, like I really like real-time strategy games. I loved Command and Conquer back in the day. I'm a big fan of StarCraft. Warcraft I wasn't ever like a huge fan of, but I do like it. I never really got into Homeworld. I played it a bit just because it was like stunningly beautiful for the time. It was like such a cool looking game. The soundtrack's amazing too. But it just always felt too complicated. It always felt a little bit too tricky to play. It'll be interesting to see with Homeworld 3 whether they go down a path of like trying to make it even more hardcore that I think a lot of people wanted, you know, giving it much more depth, or whether they're going to try and simplify it to attract a bigger audience. You know me, I always think simplifying things to attract a bigger audience is probably the way forwards. I think that's probably the better way to do it, but we'll see how it goes. By the way, if I'm talking weird, I still have stitches in my tongue. It makes me feel, I'm like very conscious of it all the time, that I've got stitches in the end of my tongue, and so it makes me talk a little bit stranger than usual, which kind of sucks. Mark's at Home said, I think Homeworld was one of the first games you bought for a PC and you didn't have a PC at the time. Yeah, like Homeworld was one of those games. It was like quite a big event game. It was just kind of, other real-time strategy games at the moment looks like, you know, Command & Conquer and StarCraft. Like they looked very simple. And then you have this game that just looks like, you know, if you've ever watched like the big ship battles in something like Star Trek or something, it almost looked like that, where it was just stunning. Like I was saying, like you have these giant ships, like the scale was really impressive. And you got tiny little ships leaving like these little laser trail type things around. It just looked amazing. It was really cool. It'll be interesting to see like what they do with Homeworld 3. I think by the sounds of it, delaying it is the right move, as it usually is, because like I said, we've barely seen anything of the game, and it was meant to be releasing like now. We also have Diablo 4 coming out a week today, so I'm super excited about this. It's coming out next Friday. When it comes out, it's basically, that's all I'm streaming. Like, I don't really have any plans to stream anything else once Diablo comes out. I'm going to be playing a lot of that, so get used to it. And they've just announced that there's Twitch drops, so if you're watching me, you'll be able to unlock a bunch of cosmetics, which is very, very cool. Annoyingly, they did a thing where it's like support a creator, where some creators got offered a thing where you could do it so if you gift 2 subs to them, then you get a special horse skin. And I read the thing, I was like, oh, I didn't hear about that. And then I looked at my Twitch and I had the bloody notification saying that like I could have signed up for it, but it's too late now. And it just hadn't come up as like a new notification, which like Twitch stuff sometimes does. I get so many notifications from Twitch about, new games being added to Twitch Prime and stuff like that I didn't notice it. So that sucks. So I don't have that. I'm not on that list, which is kind of annoying. But you will be able to get Twitch drops with it, which is pretty cool. And then also just in sort of me streaming news, later today at 4 p.m, I'll be streaming F1 2023. I'm allowed to stream it for an hour from 4 p.m. I also have a 15-minute video coming out where I've got a race from Miami on there. So if you want to check out Formula 1 2023, the things that are different, particularly from the view of someone, I play on controller. I'm a casual when it comes to these sort of things. I don't have all the simulation settings turned on. I more play it a bit like an arcade racer. If you want to see the game from that perspective, my video, my stream is probably the way to do that. And then I'll probably, after I finish that, I'll probably play some Lego 2K Drive because I kind of want to finish that game. I feel like I'm getting close enough to be able to finish it, so I definitely want to play it a bit more. Maybe we'll make some more cars and stuff like that. I enjoyed making the X-Wing in the last stream. Maybe we'll do some more of that. Right, the other big news is the Warhammer Skulls event. This is something that I didn't know anything about. Like, I didn't know that this was going to happen. I don't know if this is the first time it's happened or if it happens every year. I didn't know anything about this at all, but apparently there's a big event called Warhammer Skulls. And it's kind of like, it seems like there was a big game show. I don't know if that was part of it or if that's the whole thing, just showing off video games that were connected to Warhammer in some way. It seems a little bit like I assume that maybe there was like a big in-person event with like actual Warhammer stuff. I don't really follow Warhammer like at all. As a kid, I used to get some of the Warhammer 40,000 stuff, and I would sort of glue them together and try and paint them, and I was quite bad at it, but my dad would help me. Never really played the game at all, but I loved the idea of it. Like, I love the universe of Warhammer. I think a lot of kids do, the big bulky space marines and like the crazy orcs and, scary looking Tyranids and stuff like that. They just look cool. They had like a really cool aesthetic to them. Like, it's a very cool take on like science fiction war. Something that's very different from like Star Trek or Star Wars or anything like that. Instead, this is very industrial, very kind of bulky and menacing. And so with the video games, I was always kind of interested because, playing the actual games, a lot of hassle. You've got to spend hundreds of pounds on the figures, hours and hours and hours, like dozens of hours gluing and painting stuff. And then you've got to learn these ridiculous, massive rule books. And then you need a massive space to play. And then you need to find someone who's willing to play a game with you that's going to take absolutely forever. It's like, I don't think there's that many people who manage to get into actually playing Warhammer just because there's so many barriers. But with the video games, you just buy the video game and play. And there's been some great Warhammer video games in the back. Like Space Hulk was a lot of fun way back when. I remember like reading loads about that. And when I finally got to play it, I was so excited. And then like Dawn of War was really good. I did have some Warhammer, like not 40,000, but normal Warhammer, real-time strategy ages ago, like early days on the PC. But I can never remember what that was called. I remember like there being lots of snow for some reason. But yeah, anyway. And then, there's been a bunch of other stuff since, like the Space Marine game was very, very good. There's also, and Vermintide was a lot of fun. Darktide was all right. There's a lot of games that have been kind of okay, and then there's been lots of games that have been quite bad. And it's always been a bit weird with the Warhammer license that they seem to let a lot of people use it fairly freely without that much quality control. So like there are a lot of poor Warhammer games, and there's a lot of games that are just kind of mid-tier Warhammer games. It's a bit like the Vampire the Masquerade world, where it's like, there's a ton of games in that universe that are just kind of okay. And I don't know if it's just that the license is like free or insanely cheap, or they don't bother checking games before they come out. But yeah, it just seems odd that there's this like quite cool license that just gets used by absolutely everybody. But anyway, this Warhammer Skulls event happened, and they had quite a lot of announcements that like was stuff I was interested in. So there was a bunch of stuff that I'm not that interested in. Like there's a new Total War Warhammer. I don't know if it's DLC or the whole new game, Total War Warhammer 3. There was new DLC for Darktide and Vermintide. There was a bunch of stuff for like, there's some spaceship Warhammer game that people get excited about. There's a bunch of stuff like that. But then they made some announcements that were stuff that I do care about. So Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 got a trailer. This is a game, like, if you haven't played the first Warhammer Space Marine, it's a third-person action game where you play as a Space Marine, kind of dropped into just, in the first one, you're dropped into, like, hordes of orcs. And the whole point of, like, Space Marines is that even though, like, I think people see them as, like, you know, the grunts in in Warhammer, like, when you see all the figures, they're the ones that there's, like, lots of. They're actually meant to be, like, almost like, you know, Spartan level soldiers, you know, like in Halo where Master Chief is this like crazy super soldier. That's what all of the Space Marines are like in Warhammer. Like, they are insanely strong, insanely resilient. They live for a crazy long time. They have insane weapons and stuff like that. And the idea is that one of them is like worth, you know, having 1,000 normal humans fighting. And in that game, they did a really good job of making you feel like that. Like, they had this game, you know, you drop into literal armies of orcs, and yet it still kind of feels like you feel sorry for the orcs. Like, you just absolutely slice through them. And, you know, there's elements of, like, being like the Doom guy, or, like I said, being like Master Chief or something like that, where you get lots of different abilities, lots of different crazy weapons, and you're just, like, powering through. And there's some ideas, like, similar to Doom 2016 about, you know, how you have to go on the offensive to, like, build up some of your resources that you're using, and then you can spend them to kill even more stuff. It was just a really cool game, and like, the story wasn't anything amazing, and it got a little bit repetitive, like, it was a little bit too long for what it was. But the actual game was a huge amount of fun to play. Like, the gameplay was really solid, and that's kind of what you want, to be honest. Anyway, they announced Warhammer 40,000 2. I think they announced it last year at some point. Yeah, the Gameplay Awards 2022, they showed it off. So last year. But they've decided to do another one. They've decided to do like a new gameplay trailer for this Warhammer Skulls thing, and it just looked awesome. It shows that you're fighting against the Tyranids. They're like big alien things, like a bit more like the alien from Alien, like that kind of style of thing. That you're ripping through those rather than orcs this time. I thought that it was meant to be co-op, but apparently it is just single player. But yeah, they've like really doubled down on this idea that you're fighting thousands of enemies. The trailer looked very, very cool. Like, it was a huge power fantasy. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to play that game. I think it's a sort of game where it's crazy that it's not a co-op shooter. Like, it seems like it would be perfect to like drop in with a friend and just be like 2 Space Marines against, you know, an entire army would be awesome. But it doesn't seem like it is. It's just single player. But I'm sure it'll still be lots of fun. It's coming out in 2023. I don't think we have a release date for it yet. So it's going to be, you know, at some point this year. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited to see that. Yeah, Joe Biden. Joe Biden in my chat just said that, yeah, it looks stunning. The trailer looks so good. Then there's another thing that I think Marked at Home was just mentioning, that Warhammer 40,000 is coming to Power Wash Simulator. Power Wash Simulator has basically announced a bunch of licensed DLCs. One of them is, I think, SpongeBob. Or at least I saw that on Twitter. I don't know if it was a joke that I've fallen for, but I saw Power Wash like X SpongeBob and a thing of, you know, someone turning up at Bikini Bottom with a Power Wash Simulator, which doesn't make sense because it's already underwater, but who knows. But yeah, Warhammer 40,000 is getting some like Power Wash Simulator DLC, and so I'm assuming that you'll be going in and clearing off like armor and tanks and things like that. That's pretty cool. It's a very grimy world, but when you actually see the armor like all fresh and new, you know, when people paint it and it looks all new, it looks really, really cool. So I think that could be a lot of fun. Power Wash Simulator, like, I get the memes, like, it's a funny idea for a game, and it is weirdly addictive, but I still sort of played it once, and I played it for a very long time that one time I played it, but then I just deleted it, because I was like, what am I doing? Like, this just isn't engaging at all. It's sort of something just to turn your brain off with while you're playing. And then there's a game that I'm super excited about, a game that I'm really interested in, which I can play today. So I'll probably play a little bit of this alongside my Formula 1 2023 stream later today. And that is Speed Freaks. So this is a racing combat game. And if you go onto Steam right now, I didn't get given like special access to it or anything, but if you go onto Steam right now and look up Warhammer 40,000 Speed Freaks, and Freaks is spelled with 2 E's, you can see it, and it's a racing combat game, so like, you know, Twisted Metal kind of idea. I don't know how much the racing actually matters, but I think there's a lot of driving around and attacking other people. But there's an alpha test going on today. You can click on it, install it. You can click on it and like request access, and I think they'll just give you access pretty much immediately, and then you'll be able to play it. So we'll probably take a look at that later today to see what it's like. Oh, I've also got into the beta for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Maybe I should play a bit of that as well. Like I should probably download that. Texas Chainsaw. I don't know if I was ever accepted into it or not. But yeah. So there's a bunch of cool stuff. Oh, and then with the Warhammer stuff, there's also a real-time strategy game being made by Frontier. So Frontier are the people that made like Planet Coaster and Planet Zoo, and they make F1 Manager 2022. They make Elite Dangerous. They make all of those kind of things. And yeah, they've announced that they're doing an Age of Sigmar real-time strategy. I don't really know anything about Age of Sigmar. I think it's like the old Warhammer, not 40,000. But I am excited about there being a new real-time strategy game. I just think it's a genre that I used to love so much, and it kind of doesn't really exist anymore. You hardly ever hear about real-time strategy games anymore. And when you do, they're sort of like generally indie games. They're not that exciting. They don't have the kind of passion or development time behind them that something like Command & Conquer or Total Annihilation or StarCraft used to. And so them announcing a new one is exciting. I've asked to get involved with whatever I can with the Age of Sigmar stuff. I'm excited to talk about that. It'll be cool. But yeah, and then, you know, we do also have, there's a new real-time strategy game coming from some of the people that worked on StarCraft 2. That's called like Stormfrost or something like that. But yeah, like that, hopefully we'll see some gameplay of soon. I just want there to be like a renaissance for real-time strategy games. I want there to be more of them. Real Deal said, do you know when this will come to PlayStation 5 or Xbox? Warhammer 40,000 Darktide. I didn't know Darktide wasn't already on console, to be honest. I've played Darktide a little bit. I've got a copy of it. I didn't love it, to be honest. I didn't think it was as good as Vermintide. Yeah, it's on Xbox, isn't it? I thought so. Oh no, it came out on PC, and then Xbox and Xbox Series X and S at least. They haven't announced a date for it coming out. So it sounds like they are working on it. I wouldn't be surprised if, with how sort of it didn't do very well, I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up kind of not coming out, to be honest, on Xbox, because maybe it's not worth it. But it was fine. Your favorite real-time strategy game of all time is Age of Empires 2. Yeah, like Age of Empires is a weird one. I never quite got into Age of Empires. In the same way that I did with Command & Conquer and Warcraft. Not Warcraft, sorry. Command & Conquer and StarCraft. I think maybe just because of Age of Empires is like a little bit slower to get started. Like the early game is just not as sort of engaging, and that means games tend to go on a very long time in Age of Empires. Whereas StarCraft and Command & Conquer, it's all about, you know, you start fighting straight away. Like you start rushing super quickly, and then you just keep on going. I think it's yeah, it would, Age of Empires, like even the brand new one was called Age of Empires 4. It was cool and I enjoyed playing it for a bit, and I thought I'd get really into it, but then I just found like every match against another human was taking like 40 minutes, and I was like, this is too long. And it often came down to like, oh, okay, over those 40 minutes, one person has dominated the gold, and therefore they've got an insane army now. They've won. I'm sure if I spent loads of time learning it, then I would get more into it, but you know, I'm not really about that. I'm not really interested in doing that. I'm just looking at Darktide, how it's doing on Steam. Because I think Steam was its main platform. Yeah, it's got 2,000 people playing, down from a peak of 107,000. So at launch, it had 107. And then it dropped off over like 2 months down to 2,000 people. That is harsh. I bloody love Steam charts. Like, I know it's, you know, kind of unreliable in some ways, you know, especially for games that are multi-platform. But it's super interesting looking at trends. Like Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2, has dropped down to slightly below 40,000 now, which I think is the lowest I've ever seen it. It's down to 39,000, which kind of sucks. That's something that I did want to talk about a little bit. Maybe we'll talk about that after Gollum if we get to it, just about what is happening with Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 and its popularity or anything like that. Oh, one last piece of news, actually, before I forget, while we're talking about Call of Duty, tomorrow we have the community event. This is happening tomorrow at 8 p.m. So Saturday, 8 p.m. over at twitch.tv/Geeky Pastimes. We're going to be running some custom games of Warzone. It's an event that's kind of held by Call of Duty UK, but we're hosting it essentially, which is exciting. We're going to have prizes for like 4 different games of Warzone. We've got 3 2,400 COD points to give away, and we've got 1 Black Cell code. That'll be for the last game of the night. So we will get everyone in. It's just going to be for fun. Custom games are nice because, you know, you've got a proper mix of abilities in there. Everybody is welcome, especially if you're not that good at the game. Like, this isn't like, oh, a hardcore tournament for the best players to go up against each other. This is a silly thing for people to come in. You're not going to get, like, called out if you're camping or if you're using whatever guns you want to use. Like, you play how you want to play, and everyone's going to have a laugh, and it's going to be amazing. So, yeah, Call of Duty Community Night, Saturday, 8 p.m. Make sure you're there. The more the merrier. And, you know, invite your friends and absolutely everybody. It would be really, really good. Right, going back to chat, someone said, do you think that 40 minutes long is because lots of games are now very quick, 10 to 15 minutes per match? I think Mark's at home that it's just it's to me at least, like, it's always a plus when games are shorter. Like, I can't think of a single type of game that I play that has like rounds in it where I am happy if it's like 40 minutes. It's just too long. It's just too long to get into one game because, you know, a lot of the time you'll have a decent idea of whether it's going well or not. If it's going badly, you're just stuck in this game for an insanely long time, you know, unless you just quit out, but then that feels a little bit harsh. If you're winning, sometimes, you know, it just takes a very, very long time to win. I just think 40 minutes is too long. Like, PUBG always had that problem that a match of PUBG took like 40 minutes and the mid game was so slow and so boring. And then like Warzone and Apex and stuff came along and had games that are more like 25 minutes. And I think it just works really well. Like, having a shorter game made it more engaging and made it more fun. And the same thing happened with like MOBAs, where you had like League of Legends and Dota. A match of that can be about 45 minutes long. Whereas Heroes of the Storm came out and was like 15 minutes for a game, and I absolutely loved that. I thought that was a lot better. I just think for most games, 15 minutes is about the sweet spot. For like a 15-minute match of something is still, you know, that's still quite a long time. It's a bit too long for like a race or something, but it's good for most types of game. And I just kind of wish that they would do more stuff like that. Yeah, I like a slightly shorter game. I think that's cool. I don't like it in Modern Warfare 2 ranked when you get like a search and destroy match and it's doing it in like the, you know, the rounds. It's like the first to 6 rounds or something. And if both teams manage to win 5 rounds first, then it goes on. It's just like, oh my god, this game is taking forever. Yeah, CS6, it's going to be really, really good. I'm looking forward to it. Dark Tide's on Game Pass for PC. That's good to know. So if you have Game Pass, which you should, because it's the best deal in gaming, then you can play Dark Tide for free on PC. DMZ, yo. I don't know why you're saying DMZ, yo, real deal. We're not really talking about DMZ. Titanfall 3 would be cool. Yeah, I'd love to see Titanfall 3. Bring back Time Splitters. Time Splitters is a weird one. I've like gone back and played Time Splitters 2 and 3 a little bit over the years, and they didn't age well. Like, they got a long way left behind compared to a lot of other games. Time Splitters is one of those games that works quite well if you're sitting on the sofa and you're playing, you know, split screen with a lot of your friends. I don't think online it's ever worked out well. And like when people have talked about wanting a new Time Splitters, I think it's one of those things like people who wanted the remake of GoldenEye. It's like, how many people do you see playing the remake of GoldenEye now? It's like, it came out and then people were like, oh yeah, this isn't as good as it was. And they just forgot about it. And it's just, I think that's a very sort of common thing. Joe Biden said, Time Splitters is one of the greatest FPS franchise ever. So much potential. It's a no-brainer. It has everything in it. Yeah, it's one of those, you know, jack of all trades but master of none. You know, it's like Wild West stuff wasn't very deep. Its sci-fi stuff wasn't very deep. Its gothic stuff wasn't very deep. It was just like it had a handful of skins for each thing and a map. And then a couple of guns maybe that would kind of fit into it. I think those sort of games are a bit better left in the past. Me and my wife went yesterday to a gaming bar that's just opened up in Norwich called Barcadia. Something to do with Ashens, people who know him. He was something to do with it, raising money for it or whatever. But we went there and it's like they've got a bunch of arcades and a bar, basically, you know, Barcadia. And we went in there and like the arcade machines, like there was the original House of the Dead, the original Marvel vs. Capcom, a bunch of stuff, you know, that you'd expect, like Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Centipede, all kind of those kind of retro games, Metal Slug, Mortal Kombat 1, stuff like that. And, you know, me and my wife played House of the Dead 1 for a bit, and, like, she was immediately within 10 seconds being like, this isn't as good as I remember. And, you know, I completely agree that, like, a lot of these games, I remember having these really cool memories of them when they were the new thing, and when, you know, we were playing them, and there's, like, you know, a group of people stood around playing it, and it was a lot of fun. And now you play it, and it's like, oh, games have actually come on quite a way. I'm like, I'm just not that interested in retro games and older games. I generally think that games have got better over time. Like, I generally think games that are coming out now are better than games that have come out in the past. And it's like, there's the odd exception. You look at games that are past, and you can look at some games and be like, oh, that was a really cool game. But even then, I can't think of that many old games that have, like, come and gone that people don't really play anymore that were better than, like, that are better now than the games that are coming out now. Like, Titanfall 2 is probably the only real example because, you know, the servers got ruined. Although I know there's a mod that lets you, or like a private client type thing that lets you play it now. But yeah, like, I can't think of any other games really that worked like that, where the original, like, that game back then is better than games now. Like, even the old Call of Duties, if you actually go back and play those games, they're not that good. Like, you know, the movement isn't very good, the weapons aren't balanced, the maps are sometimes not very interesting, the progression isn't there. There's just a lot of things that have made games better recently. Unreal Tournament. But Unreal Tournament, they brought it back. Like, they made that open source version of it where loads of people could contribute to it, and it felt very much like Unreal Tournament to play. And then they cancelled it when Fortnite came out because there just wasn't that much interest in it. Because, to be honest, that sort of game is just kind of, like, gone by. It's gone out of fashion. Older RPGs is genuinely superior. The whole RPG genre is an example of older is better. You have some weird takes, Joe Biden. Like, what, would you rather play Daggerfall and Arena rather than playing Skyrim? Like, that's just nonsense. Like, I disagree with that. I think, like, there's been, if you look at, like, big RPG games, there was a lot of games like the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, you know, when they redid those, were just absolutely stunning. The Witcher 3 obviously has been amazing. Divinity Original Sin 2 was really, really good. Baldur's Gate 3, from what I've heard, is amazing, is really cool. There's, like, a lot of modern RPGs have been absolutely amazing. It does take a lot longer to make RPGs, so you don't, like, you know, I'm talking about Mass Effect and stuff, which still came out like 10 years ago. We haven't had that many big RPGs over the last few years. Final Fantasy 16, you know, the reports are that it's amazing. Final Fantasy 7 Remake was amazing if you're into JRPG type stuff. Yeah, I disagree. I think RPGs have got better. Knights of the Old Republic over Jedi Fallen Order. You know, Jedi Fallen Order isn't an RPG, right? I think I might stop listening to what Joe Biden's saying. Yeah, Jedi Fallen Order isn't an RPG. It's an action adventure game. Knights of the Old Republic was cool, although Knights of the Old Republic still, like, you go back to it, it's not that great anymore. I think that's a lot of the reason, you know, people, like, there was meant to be that remake and then it got cancelled. I don't think it has held up incredibly well. The story was cool. Yeah, they don't hold up at all, pal. I agree. I mean, Knights of the Old Republic 2 is, like, almost unplayable without a fan patch to fix it because so much stuff was broken and so much stuff was removed from it. You kind of need the fan patches to make it better, just because RPGs have generally got better. Battlefield 5 soldier movement was ahead of its time, and Titanfall 1 and 2 was groundbreaking as far as soldier movement goes. Yeah, Battlefield 5 was a weird one where, like, I really didn't like the maps or the guns or pretty much anything about that game, but it felt really cool. Like, your sort of connection to the world was really solid, but it was just kind of the World War II setting didn't do it for me, and the maps they picked, I just didn't love it. I liked some of the DLC they did later, but when it started off, I just didn't love it, really. Yeah, for sure there are 15 letters. Is that how many? Are there 15 letters in his name? Someone should check. Anyway, let's get on to talking about the main topic of today, which is Gollum. So, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of dunking on games. I don't do it too often. Like, I play a lot of games. Like, I play pretty much every big release that comes out, especially if people are willing to send me a key for it. I just play a bit of everything because I love new games. I love trying new things. I love always, you know, hoping to try and find, like, some big new game that I'm going to love. So I give everything a go. And generally, if I don't like a game, I just move on and don't talk about it. There's been lots of games I've played lately, like Silica, where it's like I played it and was like, yeah, not for me, and just didn't talk about it anymore. And that happens a lot. There's lots and lots of games that are like that. I try them, don't like them, and it's like, it's boring to not like stuff. Like, I know there's some people who like build their whole personalities around, not liking modern games, not liking modern Star Wars films, not liking modern TV shows, not liking modern music, and they're like, oh, things used to be so much better, but now all of these new things are trash, and like corporations are greedy and evil, and like everything was better when I was young. I just think that's a really boring kind of personality. It's much more fun to talk about stuff you like. It's much more fun to be excited about things and hyped for things. I think that is a better way to be. And I try to be like that. Like, I know when I did a podcast yesterday and I was talking about the PlayStation Showcase, I was quite negative about a lot of stuff. And I wish I wasn't. I wish there was more stuff that I could be excited about for it. I just think it's more interesting to be positive about stuff, especially in the gaming space where there's enough boring negativity. Like, are there many people that load up Twitter and it's like, I can't wait to see what people are complaining about with Call of Duty today? Because I read so many tweets. There's so many people I've just unfollowed because it's like, even though I kind of used to like their content about Call of Duty, now it's just them complaining about the game constantly. And it's like, they'll complain about something, it'll get fixed, and they'll just shift on to complaining about something else. They're never talking about the stuff they enjoy. They're never talking about the stuff they like about the games. And it's like, oh my God, this is just tedious. It's soul draining to listen to or to read. So I try to be positive. I try to talk about stuff I like. And I also think there's an element of, developers, you dunking on their games isn't particularly nice. And, developers, when they've been working on a game, a lot of people will work on a single game for like 3 or 4 years. Like, that's a long time. Like, that's a long time to work on something. That's longer than I've been working on Geeky Pastimes. People have been like working on a single game, and then imagine it comes out and people just dunk on it. People are just like, this is trash, I hate it. And it's like, that must be really, really horrible. And there's not really any need for it. There's so much choice of games. There's so many games out there. If you don't like a game, you can just move on to something you do like and don't waste your time. Like, I don't play like new FIFA games and then leave reviews on the internet and leave reviews on like Steam or whatever being like, oh my God, I hate this game. I think football's really boring. It's like, why would I? Like, I know I don't like those games. Why would I bother, just wanting to dunk on them? Just wanting to insult the developers or anything like that. And you see that, with Call of Duty, you still see people like in the Call of Duty community who are like, there hasn't been a good Call of Duty game since like Black Ops 2. Like, every game is trash. The developers are trash. I hate them. It's like, why are you still here? Like, why are you still trying to be a part of this community when you clearly hate everything? Like, just go find something else to do with your life that you actually like. That would be better. It's just, yeah, it must be weird for the developers having to engage with people like that they know no matter what they do, they're not going to be happy. So it's like, who cares? It's like, sometimes I have people leave comments on my videos being sort of like, these are the worst guide videos, or these are the worst videos. Like, they're so boring. I hate them. And it's like, all right, thankfully, one of the joys of YouTube is there's loads of other videos. Go watch something you do like. I never, like, when I'm watching YouTube videos, I literally never watch a video, don't like it, and then decide I'm going to leave a comment on that video to tell them how much I didn't like it. I'm going to press the dislike button. I just don't do that. I just close that video down and go find a video that I do like. Like, it's just bizarre. It's such a weird mindset to me where everyone, like, the people who are like that seem to think that they're the main character, that their opinion desperately matters, and that, people need to know their opinion. If they're watching something, if they're watching a creator, they have to let them know that they were not pleased about this, as if the creator's gonna give a shit. And then it's like a similar kind of thing with games, where it's like there's some people who play games and feel a desperate need to tell the developers what they thought of it. And it's like, why? Why does your opinion matter? Like, I'm sure there's just generations of people now who've been brought up with social media thinking that their opinions matter. And it's like, there's always been this weird mixed messaging. When I was a teacher, I was always a bit wary of this, that like kids getting taught like, your opinion matters just as much as anyone else. And when people hear that, they seem to think that that means that any crappy opinion they have is now valid. And that's not what it means at all. All it means is that an opinion doesn't matter, like, who's the person who has that opinion. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, the opinion can still be valid even if, you know, you're not in the upper class or whatever. That's what we're talking about. Like, even if you're, you know, if you're a minority or you are in a lower financial class or you're from a different part of the world, your opinion still matters just as much as people who are in those privileged classes. That's the spirit of that message. But people misunderstand it because, you know, we tell them when they're kids. People misunderstand it and think that that means every crappy opinion they have matters. And that's not true at all. In much the same way as my opinions about, like, MMA fighting don't matter because I don't know anything about MMA fighting and I don't care about it. So why would my opinions matter? Or my opinions about some things might just be wrong because I have a bad opinion about it. You know, maybe I've got a misinformed opinion about it. There's plenty of reasons my opinions would be bad, and therefore those opinions wouldn't matter. And online, people seem to have this feeling that their opinions are super valuable and that everyone wants to hear them. Like, everyone wants to find out about them. And that's weird. Like, that's an odd feeling. And, you know, obviously there's a bit of hypocrisy going on here with me as a content creator, because a lot of what I do is telling you about my opinions. But I'm sort of, like, at least aware enough that my actual opinions don't matter. Like, the thing that matters, the thing that you're here for, is, like, a bit of entertainment, a bit of conversation, a bit of chat. You know, I'm here to, like, waste your time, essentially. I'm here to give you a bit of entertainment. And some people like hearing me talk and like arguing against the things I say, or like sort of being like, yeah, I agree with him. And that's fine. But at no point am I under the illusion that my opinion matters very much. Like, I'm not expecting game developers to listen to me and be like, oh, well, he said that, so that's really interesting. And it's, you know, a process. I've sort of learned that over time, that when I started doing this and people started paying attention to what I said, I started getting this weird, like, hubris of like, oh, well, now people are listening to me, so my opinion must matter. And I remember saying to a couple of Call of Duty developers, being like, oh, well, if you want my opinions on the Easter eggs and stuff like that, just let me know. I'll be happy to share them. And it's like, actually, looking back, why does it matter? My opinion doesn't matter for these things. But people feel the need to share it, even if it's hurtful to the developers. And I think, you know, there's no reason to do that. There's no reason to go onto a developer's social media accounts and start being like, you messed up this game. You did a bad job of this game. You should feel bad. It's like, that's just bullying. That's just mean. And people will be like, well, it's just honest criticism. Everybody needs criticism. And it's like, yeah, but not from you. People will get criticism from their bosses. People will get criticism from people they respect, who they ask for. That's who you get criticism from. You get criticism from the people who are in charge of you, who are there to make those decisions. And then you get criticism from people you ask for it from, because anyone who makes anything knows where to get feedback from. You know, if I have a thumbnail that I'm not sure about, or I have a video I'm not sure about, I have people that I will ask because I respect their opinions. You know, maybe I'll ask some of my in real life friends because I know they can be honest with me. Maybe I'll ask Jack Frags because I know, or Broken Machine, because I know they're really successful creators and they know what they're talking about, or Mr. Waffle Waffles. I'll send them a DM and be like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, but I'm not sure. Or I just made this video. What do you think of it? I'll do that because I care about their opinions. I don't need the feedback of some random person who I don't know. Like, that's not useful. And it's the same with game development, where I know there's like this trend at the moment for game developers to be like, oh, we really value all of the feedback and criticism and stuff like that. And it's like, why? Who cares about like all of the random people's feedback? Like, if they want to know what people think of the game, they have marketing departments that work that out. Like, they know, or community managers that work out that stuff for them. They don't need individuals being like, well, I found that the animations were actually a bit crap in this. It's like, oh, who cares? Who cares? Don't, like, keep your opinion, like, share your opinion with your friends, whatever. Just don't feel entitled to share it with the developers, and don't feel like they need to pay attention to you. Like, just because you had some bad ideas doesn't mean it matters. Your opinions 1000% matter. Wouldn't have an algorithm without opinions or ideas. See, I think you're mistaking this. Just because, like, your individual opinion does not matter about anything, really, other than something where people are asking for your opinion about it. And, you know, people will know to ask. Like, you don't ever need to give unsolicited feedback or advice. You just don't have to do it at all. Like, whenever you see people online giving feedback to, like, the Call of Duty developers, and they're saying, like, oh, well, I don't like this, I don't like this, you should do this, you should do this. They already know. Like, they already know this stuff. And, like, if they see something, you know, people just talking about something online that they didn't know about, then they can ask more about it, and then they can find it out. But individual people's opinions it just doesn't matter that much. So yeah, I would maybe just not go around spending all your energy dunking on it. You know, if you're sitting there being like, oh yeah, I don't like this video, I need to tell him that I didn't like it, just go find another video to watch. That's it. I would, you know, personally, and obviously I can't please anyone else doing this, I would say I use the dislike button on videos very sparingly, but I use it when the content doesn't match up with what the kind of you know, the title or the thumbnail was. If I feel like I was clickbaited or something, then I might press the thumbs down button. And I think that's fair enough. You know, people are obviously entitled to do that sort of stuff to me. But if you're watching a video or you're playing a game and you don't like it, just go do something else. You don't need to tell the people that made it what you think of it. It's like, it's fine. It's fine. You can just do something. And then they will know whether that video was good or bad based on how well it performs. You know, we've got like, you know, as a video maker, we've got so many analytics to use to know whether a video is good or not. And, you know, one of the big ones is the engagement rate, you know, like the watch time. If I release an 8-minute video and everybody's only watching 2 minutes of it, then I know that that was a bad video. And then I can think about that. And then maybe I'll ask the people I care about for their feedback. I never go into the comments to find out if a video was good or bad. I'm never like, oh yeah, I need to hear the opinions of all these people that feel the need to leave their opinions on everything. Like, that's just nonsense. Yeah, just don't leave negative comments. All you're doing, if you leave negative comments on stuff, whether it's a content creator's video or whether it's a company's trailer or anything like that, or someone who has made something their social media, when you're leaving negative comment, all you're doing is potentially hurting their feelings. That's it. You're just maybe making them feel bad. Like, that's it. And if that's like so important to you, then you're a bit of a dick. Like, you're not a nice person. So don't do that. Anyway, I just saw in the chat, Flynn was just talking about winning a load of games back to back, and now he's going to be ready for Warzone tomorrow. It's going to be intense. I still need to play some bloody Warzone ranked. Now Flynn's got his job back and is playing different hours. I need to find some people to play Warzone ranked with. If anyone wants to play Warzone ranked this evening, let me know. I need a team. I'm in top of Silver 3. I need like one good game to get into gold, but I want to get into gold before the end of the season. So somebody needs to needs to join me and get me a win or two in Warzone, just so I can get into gold. Then I'll be satisfied. Then I'll just switch over to Diablo. But at some point between now and next week, I have to get into gold. So I need some Warzone ranked players, preferably silver or gold players. Anyway, and Flynn just said there as well, I give feedback by not giving feedback. If I don't like a game, I just don't talk about it. Exactly. That's exactly the point. For sure. So, but with all of that in mind, I feel like all of that, now I'm going to be a massive hypocrite. All of that in mind, I'm going to talk about Gollum because, God, I hate that game. And I think it's entertaining to talk about how much I hate it. I'm not going to go to the developers. I'm not going to go to any of the devs or the publishers and say, hey, that game you made, it was so bad. Let me tell you all the reasons why. But I am going to talk about it to all of you to make sure that you don't waste your money buying that game because, my God, it's terrible. And apparently it's like 50 quid. Like, it's not worth 50 quid in any way whatsoever. House UK just said too many people come to videos to have their hive mind opinion reinforced, and if it doesn't, they go mental. Thinking for yourself isn't a crime, and neither is someone disagreeing with you. I don't know what that point is, which side of that point is reinforcing, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not really talking about arguments. I'm more talking about the quality of things. I'm more talking about people leaving comments, not just disagreeing with someone, but like saying, this is bad. I just don't think you need to do it. It's fine to leave comments saying this is good, because that is a nice thing to do. That's a compliment. Complimenting people is usually a nice thing to do as long as you're not creepy. But saying like, hey, this video is really fun, or this video is really interesting, that's awesome. I love getting comments like that. People saying, this video sucks, is like, oh, okay, you just hurt my feelings a bit, but I'm not going to change the video based on what you're saying. And I imagine the same thing holds true for game developers. Anyway, Gollum. So, yay, Flynn. Yeah, we'll play some Warzone rank later. If we can get a team together later today, I'll definitely be up for it this evening. So, Gollum. I played Gollum. I got early access to it. The developers were nice enough to give me a few hours early access to it. And I got to play it yesterday on stream. And I didn't really know that much about it. Like, I'd heard people in previews comparing it to Styx, which is like this little thing where you play a goblin that's like sneaking around, taking out enemies and like completing objectives. I'd known that they'd been bigging up quite a lot in their pre-release materials the idea that you are constantly having like dialogue within yourself, you know, the idea of there being Gollum and Smeagol, and you've got two sides to his personality. And there's kind of an interesting idea there, where say if you have to make a choice in the game and you want to do the evil option, you have to convince the good side of you to go along with it. And so you have like a little thing where you have to choose like arguments to try and win him over, and vice versa. And so that's kind of all like, and I knew it was stealth. I knew that there was like, you know, some limited stealth combat, but it was mostly a stealth game. But I played the game, and my God, it's terrible. Like, just, I haven't played a game that bad for so long. Like, for so long. And I'm going to put a bit of gameplay up while we're talking about it. There we go. Just turn the volume down. So I'll put the gameplay on so you can see what it looked like. But yeah, you can see like immediately, anyone who's watching the video, that like there's a lot wrong with like the environment and the animations and just everything. Like, Gollum himself looks like a weird baby. He just looks like a weird, scrawny baby that's got some odd hair that kind of flicks around. And the animations look absolutely awful. Like, when you tap the jump button, you jump like 20 feet into the air, it feels like. You jump insanely high for no apparent reason. Like, I'm not sure why Gollum's meant to be so insanely good at jumping. But it's also this weird kind of floaty jumping, where there's not really any proper inertia. There's not really any kind of physics being worked on there. It's just they made you go up very, very quickly, and then you kind of float your way back down. And then the environment, like you can see here in the video I'm sure I've got on the screen now, the environment is super bland. Like, it literally, I know people often say like, oh, this looks like a PlayStation 3 game, or this looks like a PlayStation 2 game. This does look quite a lot like, you know, maybe a very early PlayStation 3 game, not even a sort of late PlayStation 3 game, where the models for everything, like you can see the trees, the models are super basic. They have like one texture wrapped around stuff all over the place. We saw it a bit later where there's a bunch of lava, and the lava that gets thrown up isn't a particle effect or anything. It's literally like a PNG, like a transparent image file, and it's one file that just gets thrown up and then goes back down and gets rotated occasionally. That there's only one pattern of the lava that just gets rotated every now and then. And it just looks like, as soon as you realize it, as soon as you look at it and realize it's just this 2D thing, it looks terrible. And like, the game basically revolves around you doing a lot of platforming, more than anything. The game is like that kind of Uncharted Tomb Raider, hey, you need to climb from here to here. And it's nearly always like completely linear. Like, it's very rare that it's anything other than linear. So it's like, there is one path for you to take, you just need to find it. And they've done that thing of like, the handholds don't look like they naturally fit within the environment. They just, there is a rail here, this is what you're going to climb along. You're only allowed to run, you can do things like wall running, but you can only wall run on walls where there's paint. You can't wall run on any of the other bits at all, which feels like super annoying. You know, there's sometimes where it's like, hey, there's a ledge I need to get to and there's a flat wall. I should just be able to wall run up this. And the game's like, no, you can't wall run up that one. You also can't do things like when you're wall running like horizontally across a wall, you can't jump onto the wall and then wall run. You have to do it from the ground. Like, weird stuff like that, where it's like, if you try to jump onto a wall, you'll just slide off it and fall to your death. There's also plenty of invisible walls, which are really annoying in a game where they've given you like this super nimble, agile character, and it seems like you're meant to be exploring, you're meant to be looking around stuff. There's loads of bits where it's just like, no, you can't go here. Don't even try. Like, there's one bit where you're in a prison later on, and it's like a massive gate, and the holes are bigger than Gollum is. Like, Gollum could just walk through, but it's like, no, that's impenetrable. You cannot walk through there. And then, yeah, there's this early bit in the game that I'm just showing on the video now, where you are wandering along a cliffside and there's a bunch of stuff to look at. And you can interact with all these little environmental details and just sort of, a lot of the time it tells you a bit of a story or it gives you a bit more information. That stops entirely. Like you get like maybe half an hour into the game and it's just like, oh yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to let you analyze stuff. We're not going to tell you anything about the game world anymore. We're just going to do it. And there's loads of stuff like that where at the beginning of the game, it's framed as like Gandalf is interrogating you and you're telling the story of what happened to you. So while you're playing, there's constantly this backs and forwards of like Gandalf sometimes chipping in to ask about something and Gollum like reflecting back on what happened. And then like about 45 minutes into the game, they just forget about that. And it's just like, you never hear from Gandalf again. Like it's just sort of like, oh yeah, like we're done with that narrative technique now. We're just going to stop that. We're just going to pretend that this is happening to Gollum now, which is super bizarre. It's super strange. Like the whole idea of it being narrated just completely stops, which is super weird. And then there's also, sorry, I'll go glitchy for a second when I fast forward. There's also some like stealth bits, like here you can see, and the stealth is so, for a game that I would argue was marketed as being very much about stealth, it's so unbelievably basic to the point of like the very first stealth games were more advanced than this. If you go back to and think of games like Splinter Cell or Metal Gear Solid, they felt more engaging than this. This is literally like enemies will only see directly in front of them. If you are in a like bush or you're in a shadow, they can't see you at all. Like you are completely invisible to them. But if you make any noise behind them at all by running when you're not crouched down, then they will immediately turn around and catch you. And if anyone touches you, you are dead. And the game over screen is just literally like they will immediately like just touch you, and then it'll be like game over. You've been discovered. Oh, and that's another thing. All the fonts are very funny. Like people have realized that a lot of the game uses Calibri as its main font, which just, for a game like Lord of the Rings, you'd expect it to be some fancy font. And it's like, nope, absolutely not. Which kind of sucks. So I think I stopped playing here for a second because it was so silly. But yeah, when you can throttle enemies, so you can strangle enemies. And the way you do that is you creep up behind them and you just hold Y. And that's it. So you just go up behind them, hold Y. And you have to do it for quite a long time, but you're just holding Y until eventually they get strangled. And then they just ragdoll on the ground. But you can't do that if they've got helmets on. And the helmets are, sometimes just a little hat they've got on the top. And it's like, nope, they've got a helmet on. You can't strangle them. And it's like, why? Why can't I strangle someone just because they've got a little hat on? It's so unbelievably silly. It's very strange. Sorry, I just saw in chat someone saying the Sonic movies, they enjoyed the Sonic movies. I thought the Sonic movies were good. They were fun. They were good. Pal said, why on earth does this require a 3080 for the recommended specs? I have a 3080. I am running the recommended specs. My CPU is better than the recommended specs. And this game still ran quite badly. There's lots and lots of stutters, lots and lots of places where like performance just started chugging for absolutely no reason. It's just like utterly bizarre. And then like I was reading reviews yesterday after I finished playing it. And obviously this game's been eviscerated in the reviews. Like lots of people super, super negative about it. And I think, rightfully so. But lots of the games were like praising some of the writing and stuff and being like, well, if you're a fan of the books version of Gollum rather than a film version of Gollum, there's going to be lots to like. And, he's really interesting. And it's like, no, he isn't. Like, I've read all of the Lord of the Rings books. To be honest, the film did a pretty good job of portraying him, I thought. I didn't think he was that dramatically different from the books to the films. But this version of Gollum is just someone doing an impression of Andy Serkis. Like, that's it. And the writing is so unbelievably dull because Gollum doesn't have anything interesting to say or to think about. Like, Gollum's whole thing is that he's weak, but he wants the ring. And that's about it. Sometimes he's hungry. But he's weak and he wants the ring. And, he's willing to screw over anybody to get it all the time. He doesn't really have a lot of depth. And that's, in Lord of the Rings, he's very much a side character. He's not a core character in Lord of the Rings. He's like this little side thing that's, I think I saw in some review they referred to him, he's a victim and a villain. And that's kind of it. But there's not really anything that interesting going on in his head. And so most of the time while you're wandering around, he's just sort of like, oh, my precious, like, when am I going to find my precious? That kind of thing. Like, that's it. It's just bad. But I think, like, I just saw in chat House saying, like, doesn't look good, would try it if it was on Game Pass, but not going to spend money on it. I would say this isn't even worth your time. If this was free on Game Pass, I still wouldn't bother with it because there's nothing fun about it. Like the platforming is super floaty and silly, and like you just bounce off stuff. It's got that thing of like, you know, the Uncharted games where you like magically grip on something. You know, if you jump for a ledge and the game wants you to grab it, it will just like teleport you to it basically, and it looks super weird. But if you don't quite line up properly, so the game doesn't realize what ledge you're trying to go for, then you'll just like bounce off it and fall to your death. And it's always like instant death. It's just like, oh, you hit that, instant death. I can see here, this is genuinely this is part of the decision making. Look at that font. Just using Calibri for it. Like, that's so bizarre. And if you look at the early promo materials, this all looks a lot more stylized. I don't know why they made it look like this. But look at how ugly this is. And how basic the whole thing is. So here you can see I'm trying to convince Smeagol that I want to kill a beetle. Which is just a stupid decision. I just thought it'd be funny to do it. And it's just, you know, in that bit you hear his stomach rumble a bit. And so it's like, oh, I meant to say that, you know, oh, you're hungry. Like, that's it. There's no subtlety to it. There's no nuance. There's nothing interesting. And it doesn't seem, at least, you know, I only played a couple of hours. It doesn't seem like this builds into something like where, you know, something like a morality system where you're slowly letting Gollum take over and then you would get more like Gollum abilities, or you're slowly letting Smeagol take over and then you're getting more like charisma or options or something like that. Nothing like that happens. You don't develop at all. You don't get new abilities. You don't get new powers. You don't change in any way. You're just the same as you are at the very beginning of the game. And it's like, you know, that whole thing was me killing the beetle. Didn't even kill the beetle. Just nonsense. Beetle's just there. Beetle just flies around. It's silly. So that whole decision thing of do I kill the beetle or not doesn't matter because you don't kill the beetle no matter what you do. It's just stupid. And apparently, you know, I've heard that all the way through the game, this is the same thing, that the decisions don't really ever matter. Like, they sold it as kind of, oh, you get to choose, you know, whether you're going to be Gollum or Smeagol. All you're doing essentially is choosing a couple of reaction voice lines. Like, that's about it. My God, the game looks bad. Like, the animations are really bad. Oh, and the music's really bad as well. Like, at first I was like, oh, the music sounds kind of cool. You know, it's orchestral. It sounds like it's expensive. But then we've noticed a bunch of times where the game tries to make you feel like it's tense, like there's a lot of tension. So the music will be like, you know, and then you realize that nothing's actually happening. Nothing's chasing you. Nothing's going to happen if you just stand still. It's just like the music is there to replace the sort of tension that the game can't create. Like, the game doesn't know how to create any tension, so they just put some tense music in, hoping that you'll think that you're being chased or something, when you're just not. This game is unbelievably bad. Like, I've got no idea how they managed to, release it. Who, like, signed off on it? Who was like, okay, yeah, that's good enough, we'll put it out. Because it got delayed a bunch, and it's, like, horrific to think, like, what it was like when it got delayed. I saw some rumors, I don't know how true this is, that, I was laughing at this because the animation for him eating is really bad. You have to, like, hold X to eat, and then he just, like, shoves it into his cheek rather than putting it into his mouth. But the rumor was that apparently they originally had the model and all the text and everything a bit more like the movie version, and then there was some legal battle where, you know, the movie people, I guess New Line or whoever, didn't want the movie brand to be associated with this, so they didn't let them make Gollum look like him or sound too much like him, and they didn't let them use the fonts and stuff like that. So they had to, like, delay the game to make it a bit more kind of separate from the movies, maybe something like that. I saw one of the reviews had Smeagol pickings. Was that the IGN one? I think that was IGN used Smeagol pickings. But yeah, it's just shocking. Like, when you see games coming out and you think, like, oh, you know, the developers must have tried the hardest they could, but there's probably some decisions higher up that ruined it. It's like, surely when a game's like this, after, like, you know, even if after a couple of years the game was coming together like this is what the jumping's like, this is what the movement's like, this is what the stealth's like, this is what the level design's like, surely they just sit down and, like, we need to cancel this. There's no point. Like, this game is never going to be good. I don't believe that there was any point in the development of this game where they thought that this game was going to end up good. I feel like as soon as they got it to a point where it's playable, they were probably like, yeah, playing as Gollum isn't actually that much fun. And, you know, maybe with a really, really good developer, if they had Naughty Dog or someone, maybe they could have made it fun. Maybe they could have made his movement really, really interesting. You know, had him climbing on walls and stuff like that, like he does a bit in the films. Maybe if they'd had, you know, a really sort of competent team with the graphics engine, they could have made like all of these kind of prisons and stuff look really interesting. But they didn't have that, and they didn't have those resources. They didn't have those developers. And instead, you've got something that looks and plays like this. And it's just terrible. I'll like fast forward a bit to where I'm doing a bit more of the platforming type stuff in the prison. Oh, this is a bit more of the stealth, where it's just kind of like, and it's literally like the stealth, like you can see there's literal rectangles of shadow that you have to hide into. And then you'll find a stone that's like, oh, there's a thing to throw a stone at, and here's a stone for you to use. And it's just like telling you basically how to do it. It's very, very deeply silly. It's just bad. It's just like, this game isn't like, oh, it's unfortunate that it didn't come together. Like Redfall, I feel like Redfall was a game where they had an idea for it. It was a good idea, and they had an environment, you know, they had a setting for it that could have been interesting, and it just didn't come together. You know, like the gameplay just wasn't as fun as they hoped. They maybe didn't have the time that they wanted to flesh out some of the systems. The AI didn't work very well. There was like a lot of problems that stopped that from being a good game. But, like, at its core, you can kind of see what they were trying to do, and there is fun to be had. With this, literally nothing I did in 2 hours of it was fun. Like, no part of this was fun, other than laughing at how bad it was. I just think, like, this is a game that should have been cancelled a long time ago. I assume it was one of those things where, like, they'd spent so much money on development and on the license and stuff, they were like, well, we'd better, you know, release it. We'd better actually put it out there, because then at least there will be at least like some people will buy it. Some people will be tricked into buying it because it's got the Lord of the Rings license, because it's, you know, about a character we haven't really seen much in the games or anything like that. And, you know, that's kind of sucky. That's kind of a very negative way. I'm always a bit reluctant when people are like, oh, publishers are so anti-consumer. I think with this is quite anti-consumer, that no one involved in the development of this game thought it was good. I refuse to believe that anybody was working on this game or was involved in releasing this game and they thought it was good. Everyone must have known this was a bad game. This wasn't fun to play. It doesn't work very well. It doesn't run very well. Apparently it runs even worse on PlayStation. But yeah, it doesn't like, it's not a solid game in any way, but they decided to try and sell it to people for 50 quid. And that's like insane. And also, another thing that's shocking about it, it's not even like, sometimes you'd get those movie tie-in games, like in the Xbox 360 era especially, and PlayStation 3. You get those movie tie-in games where like, they were like 5 hours long. They were kind of fun because you got to play with the characters that you knew from the films. And it was like fine. Like games like Wanted and stuff, I thought they were fine. It was okay. There's some fun to be had in them. This game's bloody 20 hours long. I was like, absolutely, I was getting a headache playing this for 2 hours. The idea of playing this for 20 hours just blows my mind. Like, there's no way I would ever do that. Like, it's just, there's not enough here to sustain my interest for 1 hour, let alone 20. Like, why did they decide to make it so incredibly long? And so much of it is filler, like the way the game works. For a lot of this early section, you're in a prison. Apparently, this is like the first half of the game. It's like 10 hours. You're in a prison, and you wake up in the morning, and then they tell you to go do some job in the prison. You go do some job in the prison, and then then you have a bit of stealth where you go and do something sneaky in the prison. And then sometimes there's a bit of dialogue where you talk to someone in the prison. And then you go to bed, then you wake up the next morning in the prison, and you do the same thing over and over again. And it's like each day, the job that you have to do is slightly different, although they do repeat. You know, twice I had to go find some little prisoner tags from prisoners who had died, or go set some bombs off, like in the mines. Like, they repeat themselves. And it just feels like filler. It feels like the game's wasting your time. There's no interesting story. There's no character development going on. Oh god, this was so annoying, this bit. But it's like, obviously I wanted to land on that platform, but there's no control to do it. So I was so vindicated when I was having trouble with this section, and then I watched the IGN video review, and they were highlighting this specific section. They had a load of video from it explaining like how bad the platforming controls are. This just like, it's just shocking that this game got released. It's easily the worst game that I've played for a long time. Like, you know, and like I said, I play a lot of like really early in development indie games. I've played lots of early access stuff. I've not played a game that lacks fun as much as this does, and it lacks like personality and character and just like any redeeming qualities really. I guess sometimes when you're looking out into the prison, it kind of looks okay, but even when you're looking out across like, you know, the lava fields and stuff like that, it's still quite boring and generic. Like look at that lava down there, that looks terrible. And it's like there, like that looks kind of cool, all the things hanging down and all the stuff, but it's like the sort of thing we've seen in a million games before. Like it's not some new kind of aesthetic. It doesn't look unique. It doesn't look interesting in any way. It just looks bad. It just looks awful. So yeah, I'm not gonna try not to talk about Gollum anymore because this game is just unbelievably terrible. But definitely don't buy it. Don't spend any money on it. And I would be very wary of anything. I think it's Daedalic is the company that released this that they put out in future. I'd just be really reluctant to do it. If they were willing to put this out, then they obviously don't care about the people who buy their games. Like they're releasing something that they know is incredibly shoddy and not fun. And like the marketing materials for it are not like the game. Like the stuff they put out in trailers and screenshots over the last few years are not the game that came out. Like it's a different game. And that game that they were advertising didn't even look good, but this game is worse somehow. So, anyway, that's me done for Gollum. Like I said, I'm going to be streaming later. I'm going to be playing some Formula 1. Hey, cookies. I'm going to be playing Formula 1 2023 later on Twitch at about 4 p.m. And then I'll probably hop on to maybe some Lego 2K Drive, maybe some of this Warhammer Speed Freaks. We'll play a bunch of stuff. Hopefully, Flynn will be about and I'll be able to get a little team together. I'll try and find someone else to join to play some Warzone Ranked as well. So we might do some of that. So make sure later today you head on over to twitch.tv/Geeky Pastimes. I'll put a link in chat now so you can go press the follow button, get notified when I go live, and I'll see you all then. And if not, I'll see you for the podcast on Monday or the Warzone community event tomorrow, Saturday, 8 p.m. Win prizes. Be there. It's going to be lots of